Scary skeletons and shivers down your spine.
Hello my friends and welcome back to Player Display. Today we're going to be looking at two skeletons from Storm Collectibles. Now before we get into the review, as you could probably hear, my voice is just a little bit different. And that is because as soon as New Year's came around, I was hit with COVID, so I'm going to sound a little bit like Ghostface as we go. I feel kind of done dirty. I wish this was my default voice, I'll be honest with you. I'm kind of digging it a little bit. I was figuring I could hold off on reviews until my voice fully recovered, but at the same time, it sounds kind of cool. So I just figured, alright, well we got two badass figures here, let's just try a little something different and go with this second voice option that I've apparently unlocked this 2024. So here we go. So, Storm Collectibles is a very interesting brand, a little more on the high end, and it's one that we haven't discussed before, but one of their specialties has been skeletons, which I've never actually held before. And I gotta say, I have two of them here. I am enormously pleased. Now, these are two bloody variants, which you can only get when you get the Mortal Kombat Motaro, which I do not own, but I managed to get both of these loose on eBay so I could have a set of two. But interestingly enough, only one of them came with an extra set of hands, so I'm just going to be using one of these in order to do the review. And also, they feel extremely Jason and the Argonauts, which is something I talked about before when we were going over the Epic Hacks Gladiator skeleton before. And I also have a newfound love for the Mythic Legions figures, which I also thought they'd fit in pretty well with. So here we are, let's go ahead and do a little bit of a review. One thing I also forgot to mention is that this is going to be pretty much a one-size-fits-all review because, from what I can tell, pretty much all the Storm Collectible skeletons are largely constructed the same way, albeit with a few variations. Sometimes they come with a crocodile head and feet for some reason, or they have alternate limbs, but for the most part, they're usually constructed with the exact same pieces. The only thing that makes these ones so special is the plastic that they are molded in, as well as the unique paint job, which is what got me very excited about these, as opposed to the ones which had the generic airbrushing on them, which I didn't prefer as much. And you know me, I like the more horror, gory-looking figures to add to the horror shelf. So I'm not totally sure where I'm going to put these, with my Mythic Legions or with my NECA figures, based on the scaling, but when we do size comparisons, that'll help me to make my decision. But anyways, let's go ahead and start with this skeleton over here. So let's go ahead and start with the head sculpt, which looks absolutely phenomenal. A little bit stylized. That was something I did not prefer at first. I usually prefer just a straight, raw, realistic skull, but I still really love what they did here. And also, when you think about Jason and the Argonauts, the skulls did look a little bit more angry, a little more pissy. So that's honestly something that's warmed up on me, and I actually quite like it, and it looks very good. As you can see here, we got almost this furrowed brow, which makes the eyes look a little bit more angry, or at least the eyes soft. We have a kind of a lack of eyes at this point with this skeleton. We also got the bare exposed nose. Also have the mouth with articulated jaw. And as you go ahead and admire that, I will say that is one thing to be wary of, at least with these bloody versions of these skeletons. Because they are painted very sloppily, in a good way, we'll talk about that, it does create a little bit of tension with the various joints. And by joints, I mean the jaw, and also down here on the feet with the toe articulation, which we will talk about as well. So as you're going through these figures, I'm not sure if this could be said for all Storm Collectible skeletons, but do be careful of any areas that are heavily painted. That might make some joints a little bit stiff, but fortunately for me, any stiff joints are able to be broken out of place, and everything moves just fine now. But so that's it for the head sculpt. Looks absolutely phenomenal. You got all the teeth, got really nice gloss that comes with the blood, and I just think that's an excellent contrast with this solid gray that we have for the base color. I would have preferred more of a beige or a tan, but I still think it looks great. And besides, I could do a little bit of custom weathering myself. And speaking of custom weathering, I think that's something this guy will definitely need in certain areas like the neck. It is totally bare, which I do not love, but then again, in certain poses, it's not as visible, like right here. You have the head kind of covering the rest of the neck, so it's honestly not a huge deal for me, but just something you want to be aware of. The paint is very variable, I suppose. It changes up. It's not totally consistent across the board. You can see that we have not just red, but also a little bit of black to make it look like some blood has dried up. So I don't know if you're thinking Mortal Kombat, this is a skeleton that was ripped straight from a body, or maybe it's a body that's been left out for a while and then it's been reanimated. There's just a lot of really interesting ways to think about this figure, which is why I decided to go ahead and get two of them. I just think they're a really cool army builder that is multi-situational. We also have this really excellent rib cage, which is done in a slightly softer plastic. I wouldn't like crush it or anything. I wouldn't want to break it, but it is soft enough that it allows you to feel a little bit more freedom when you're articulating this figure. It doesn't feel like it's going to shatter or anything like that on you, so it does have a nice flexibleness to it. Apparently, when my voice goes out, my mental faculties do, so if I say anything that sounds strange, forgive me on that. But going down to the arms, they got all the anatomy right, too. That's another thing I should mention. The proportions and the bones that they sculpted do all seem very accurate to the human form, which is very cool to see. Over here we got single bone, then we got two bones, then we got all the bones that make up the little fist over here. We do have alternate hands. We'll talk about those later as well. We go ahead inside the rib cage. It's of course very unpainted. That's something I could fix, but you can see the entire spinal column going all the way down. Then again, you could probably see it a little bit better from the back, but that's just great that it's all there. You can see everything sculpted in, and you can also make out articulation points, and he's got a whole ton of them. I really hope you love McFarlane wrist joints, because basically every single joint on this figure is that. So it allows you to go up, down, left, right, and pretty much every single point on this figure, which is really excellent. Although you do have some basic ball joints, like right up here where the leg meets the rest of the pelvis over here. But yeah, I mean, go ahead and just pick and choose your favorite part of this figure. It looks fantastic. Now, I did say that the paint job is messy, but I kind of like it that way. It makes it feel a little bit more scrappy, a little bit more raw and pasty, I suppose. So I actually like the fact that it has a messy dry brush paint wash, whatever's going on here. But yeah, I just love the variation that he's got throughout, from head to toe, quite literally. Just great looking figure, a lot of fun to play with. I need to take some water before you go into our accessories. So of course these two bloody skeletons are a unique case because they're more meant to be an accessory to Motaro rather than figures in themselves. So they don't have a whole ton in way of accessories, but with other figures you can usually expect that they'd have swords and shields. But in this case they just have the hands, which is a bare minimum, but it's a very good selection. So by default, they come with two fists over here. I can't really imagine a skeleton punching, but that's totally an option for you. I definitely more opt for the other options that they've got over here. So we have two gripping hands, which look like they're one solid piece, but they are actually flexy, so you can go ahead and bend them open, no problem. I suspect they can hold any melee weapon that you prefer, maybe chains or something like that. So you got a lot of options there. You also have some relaxed hands over here. I can't see any situation where these skeletons would be relaxed, maybe if they're just dead and lying down. That's another thing, they don't have to be animated at all. They could just be carcasses in your horror display or something like that. They also have two more dynamic clawing hands. You can see, again, the paint varies between all of them, which I do personally really like. It's kind of a love-or-hate relationship. Personally, I really like it. Makes things seem more varied. Then over here, we have two trigger hands, or pointing hands, which I prefer to use them as. But if you want them holding firearms for whatever reason, that's totally an option you could go with. So, all that being said, let's go ahead and try some hand swaps. So, I have another skeleton over here with his hands already removed. The hands are a little hard to take off, so that's why I have them off right now. But let's go ahead and try gearing him up. So, let's go ahead, give him gripping hand. You see we've got the peg right there. Just gotta massage it on a little bit, warm it up with your fingers, and then it goes on. I just want to be careful of not splitting that joint right in there, which does happen on the lefty more so than the righty. I don't know why that is, but anyways, we got a hand there, and then I also have, I'm going to steal a sword from my Golden Knight, who we will see in size comparisons, and let's just see how well this sword goes in. This sword's actually not from the Golden Knight, it's from the Iron Knight, but I just prefer it with our Goldie boy, who we will again see a little bit later. But yeah, oops, well, so much for that. But yeah, you can definitely fit this sword in here. It's also a very huge sword, so this probably isn't the one that I'd go with. But yeah, let's go ahead and pan out. Actually, we'll go ahead and push on up a little bit. But yeah, you could hold the sword great, and it looks really good. Really love the contrast here. You got the really shiny sword, and then you've got the greasy, bloody looking bones over here as well. So I think that looks very cool. Let's go ahead and get him into a trigger hand option, just because why not? We're here, we might as well go ahead and do it and see what the experience is like. So here we go with an open hand. I'm going to attempt to remove this gripping hand, which again is a little difficult to do. Oh, not in that case. Alright, so I guess it varies from hand to hand, but not a huge deal. Just gotta be a little bit cautious, and I think you'll be fine. I don't think you'll break anything. So let's go ahead, get on trigger hand, and let's see what I have here. I have Ash from Evil Dead. He's got the double-barreled shotgun, so let's go ahead and see if we can have a shotgun-wielding skeleton over here. So let's go ahead and see if we can get this in. You know what? The hand is a little bit on the loose side. It's not very tight, but you know what? That's kind of badass. I'm not hating that right now. That looks pretty cool. Let's see if we could swivel this over. And oops, yeah, see, the hands are very, very soft, so you might need a little bit of tack or something to keep everything in. But that being said, it can be done. Let's get this hand under there. That'll help. There we go. Now we got a skeleton with a friggin' boomstick. I think that is a lot of fun. Man, these guys are very exciting. Can't wait to play with these more after the review. Now let's move on to articulation, which, as I said before, is pretty much predominantly occupied with those alternating ball joints as we discussed before, but it is so really fantastic. So I'm going to do my best to hit every single joint. If I miss one, I apologize, but if you see one joint, it pretty much speaks for the rest of them. So you do have one single lone ball joint up here in the head. Do some side to side. A lot down. He can't do a ton back, which I wish he did, because as you can see, he can go a ton forward. I wish I could be looking forward from that, but that's not a huge deal. You also got some arms, and again, you got that joint in there that can pretty much allow him to do absolutely anything a skeleton man can, so that's very good. There is a little bit of a swivel where the joint meets at each end of the figure, so that's very good too. Got an elbow that comes in just a little bit past 90. Also has some swivels in there. As for wrists, as we talked about, same joint in there. So that allows them to go out and in. Go ahead and rotate that. Also do the up and down if you want. You also have two joints here hidden along the spine until it meets the pelvis. So we got a joint there, got a joint down here. So you can go all the way forward and a fair amount back, which is pretty insane. I've never seen a figure do that before. Down here at the legs, we have a considerable swivel up. It can swivel past 180, so that's pretty friggin' impressive. It gets a little squeaky down there. I think that's because of the paint job, so be wary of that. Kick out to the side. Very good. As for knees, single jointed, but past 90. As for the ankles, we got forward, back, toe articulation, which again you might want to break out because of the paint, and then you also have a little bit of rocker. So yeah, this is truly an outstanding figure, and one thing that I also do want to mention while we're here is how quickly these guys stand up. You'd think that would be really difficult because of how lanky they are. They're all just bones, and that's it, but honestly, you just get them in whatever pose you want. I don't know, he's got fists. We'll just get him in a boxing pose really quickly. And these guys could be a little comedic, which I really enjoy. Go ahead, just get the legs out a little bit. And then basically once you pose them up, it's all a matter of just getting the feet right. So boom, just like that. Got him posed up. He's looking really good. See right there. No peg holes required or anything. You just got to be sure that you got him in a nice, reasonable pose. And then just push down the feet a little bit, and everything kind of falls into place really nicely. So yeah, I mean, if you do a little tap test, it's pretty good. So yeah, excellent figure all the way through. I really love these guys. Now here we are at size comparisons, where I have just a whole smorgasbord of random figures to do some size comparisons with. I mean, that's kind of the point of this segment. But over here we have Mego's Grim Reaper, the black robed variant. I actually plan on creating a custom NECA style Grim Reaper on my own, so that's kind of another reason why I really wanted these guys, so they could flank them off or something. Then I also have Ash from Evil Dead 2, because I feel like they could fit in really well with that universe. These guys are more in the 7-inch category, and I think that's pretty much where Storm Collectibles seems to belong. Seems like they scale up a lot better, because over here we have some 6-inch figures, and they seem a little bit shorter. So we have the Epic Hack Skeleton Gladiator. Then we also have the Gold Knight 2 from Mythic Legions, who is a little bit shorter than the skeleton over there. So, but I wouldn't keep them separate either. I feel like it's okay to have a skeleton that's a little oversized, especially when we're dealing with Mythic Legions. It's okay if they're a little bit on the taller side. And besides, I also don't prefer the Mythic Legion skeletons. I feel like the bones are a little too big, so I don't love those as much, but still might try them out one day. And then last but not least, we have this Star Wars The Black Series, Mechamuck! Got you right where I want you, varmint. Anything you want to say before I blow you to Kingdom Come? I apologize as my fridge starts to get very loud in the final segment of this review, but ultimately, what can I say about the Storm Collectible skeletons? They are better than I thought, and I'm ashamed for ever thinking any less of them. I was really concerned that there would be some QC issues or some balancing problems. I thought they might be very difficult to stand up, but ultimately they're able to do almost everything that you want them to do. Like, yeah, I prefer a little bit more neck articulation would be in there. I think if they maybe cut down the sculpt on the inside of the head just a little bit, then the head would be able to move a little bit more. But other than that, there's not a whole lot else I could say that I want from these figures. They're packed with just about everything. All you really need is a good set of hands, and then you also got the figure, just learn to balance them a little bit. They can have them doing absolutely whatever you want. They're very situational and very universal. You compare them with, I'd say, whether it be 6-inch or 7-inch figures, they could work in tandem with whatever collection you want. Like, I think for these particular figures, I think they'd fit better in a nightmare scenario where a character is having a bad dream or something like that. Or maybe they're in a video game, maybe they're in Doom. I don't know. Especially since they're bloodied up, I just feel like they'd fit really well in those different pocket universes. But if you want to get just standard, plain Jane, clean skeletons, those are pretty easy to get on eBay or on Big Bad Toy Store. There's always different variants of them coming out whenever you want. There's also 2 really cool samurai versions, which I passed on. I figured that the armor would make them very top heavy, so I decided to just go with these guys, a little bit of a cheaper route. And yeah, they're a blast. I really enjoy them. Let me know how you tend to enjoy your Storm Collectible skeletons if you've owned any in the past, because I feel like there's just so many different situations that you could have them in. Just really a blast. I feel like everyone gets them for different reasons. They're really cool. So if you're considering getting them, highly recommend them. I mean, there's loads of different variants out there. It just depends on what you want them doing. For me, it's really going to be horror or Mythic Legions. And I think they serve both those fronts and beyond that just fine. I think they're really cool. So anyways, that being said, I hope you enjoyed this review and you didn't mind my screwed up voice throughout all of it. So anyways, if you enjoyed, then please, as per usual, be sure to like, comment,
ring the bell to be notified of our latest arrivals,
And subscribe. This is the editor speaking, humbly reminding you to support the pod Patreon in the description to guarantee new content every single week.
Thank you guys very much for watching. Rock on, and I will see you all later.